On today's video, we are bringing you 4 league-winning players in fantasy this year.
That's right.
We're all aboard their ADP and their upside. Do us a favor, go ahead and drop a like to show some love on the channel. Subscribe if you like fantasy football. And why don't you pause right here if you want and tell us who you think is the biggest league winner based off value right now in fantasy drafts. And hey, if you want an upper hand on your fantasy leagues this year, go ahead and use our code LAND when signing up to flockfantasy.com. That would get you 30% off your membership. And if you choose that Mother Flocker tier, you're going to be able to play in a league with us. You're going to get one of your teams broken down on a live stream. And you're going to get a personalized DM for advice all year long.
That's right.
Okay, let's get to these league winners. I'll go first. And if you're with us on the Dynasty channel, I bet you can guess who this is. I will not stop talking about this player. It might be annoying for you, but I will keep talking about him until the cows come home. That is Treylon Burks. He's already locked in to be my guy. At Underdog, he is the wide receiver 35 in ADP. He is my wide receiver 25. I am 10 wide receiver spots higher than consensus. And let me tell you why. Firstly, at the end of the day, volume is king, and volume will be completely available for Treylon Burks. At this very time, DeAndre Hopkins is not a Tennessee Titan, so that could change things.
Yeah.
But opportunity will be there. The 2 players who led the Titans in targets aren't even on this team. Last year, they're gone. Robert Woods, Bobby Trees, he's gone. And Austin Hooper, both of those people led this team in targets. They have 151 targets that they vacated behind, and they're both gone. Now it's Treylon, it's Kyle Phillips, it's Nick Westbrook-Ikini, it's Chigakonkwo, and clearly Treylon Burks and Chigakonkwo separate themselves from that group. Treylon Burks averaged 4.9, so almost 5, let's call it 5, targets per game, while only averaging 57.8% of the snaps in 2022. Now, you look at the last couple weeks when he was fully healthy, because he had a lot of injury issues here as a rookie, as he's trying to even learn the game and learn the system. But the last 2 weeks when he was fully healthy, he averaged 7.5 targets per game while seeing over 73% of the snaps. Treylon Burks, if healthy, I have no doubts. I'll put all the money I have in my bank account. If he's healthy for every single game in 2023/2024, he will be an 80% plus snap player for this team as he steps into his second year, the former first round pick. A healthy Treylon Burks is likely to see 7 to 8 targets per game in this offense, assuming, again, all this is reliant on DeAndre Hopkins not coming to Tennessee, because that obviously will impact the volume. And when you look at what this team has done in the offseason, everything they have done has specifically helped a guy like Treylon Burks. Firstly, they improved the offensive line. They brought in Peter Skoronski through the draft. They didn't draft JSN or any sort of weapon in the first round. They brought in quarterback competition. You might hate Will Levis. Hey, I wasn't a big fan of Will Levis either heading into the draft. But regardless, quarterback competition brings out the best of whoever is starting. Right. And they didn't add a single weapon to compete with Burks or Chigakonkwo. Robert Woods left. Austin Hooper is gone. They didn't draft a single person to compete with those guys. And lastly, second to lastly, we saw huge flashes of growth for Treylon last year. He lacked the opportunity that he'll now see this year because of multiple injuries. He was out 6 games, but during the games that he played, he showed real promise. And there's this narrative around the Dynasty community that, man, Treylon Burks is a bust. I just do not think that's true, and I don't think you've dived deep enough into his profile to say that. So there are flashes that we really like to see. What did I love about Treylon coming out of Arkansas? Well, firstly, it was the big physical body, his ability to catch the ball through traffic, and what he can do after he has the ball in his hands. Well, this year, he was 12th in yards after catch per reception amongst any wide receivers with a minimum of 50 targets. That number is better than Terry McLaurin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devonta Smith, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen. Now, am I saying he's better than those wide receivers? No, I'm claiming in the area that I love about him, yards after the catch, he was very, very good. Top 12 in the league as a rookie. That's very rare. He was also 15th in contested catch percentage. Again, something that I loved about him coming out was his ability to catch through traffic. Now, hear me out here. He had a better contested catch percentage then the following players: Mike Williams, contested catch king; T. Higgins, contested catch king;
Right.
Amari Cooper, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Drake London, DK Metcalf, and Devontae Adams. He had a better PFF receiving grade than DeAndre Hopkins, then Michael Pittman, Brandon Cooks, Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown, and he was 29th in yards per route run, minimum of 50 targets, which was better than Chris Godwin, Jahan Dotson, Christian Kirk, DJ Moore, and Mike Evans. So there were absolutely signs to point us towards a big year 2. And the last thing I'll say on Treylon Burks, truly the last thing I'll say, I'll shut up so you can hear me stop talking about him, is I've heard a lot of narratives as the Treylon truther of why he won't be good this year. And one of the biggest ones that I've heard is that it's a bad offense in Tennessee. So let's talk about that narrative. The narrative is that because it's a bad offense in Tennessee, Treylon can't succeed in fantasy. And guys, honestly, I think you're missing the bigger picture here, which is what I said at the very beginning, which is volume is king. We see good fantasy wide receivers from bad offenses every single year. Every single year. I mean, last year, Jerry Jeudy was a wide receiver 22, and his offense ranked last in points per game. Michael Pittman was a wide receiver 20, and his offense ranked third last in points per game. Terry McLaurin was a wide receiver 14, and his offense was 24th amongst the NFL. Go back to 2021, where DJ Moore, on the third worst offense in the NFL, was wide receiver 18. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 23. All these guys, top 24. Deontay Johnson, the wide receiver 8 in the 21st best offense. Back to 2020, where Terry McLaurin in the 25th best offense was wide receiver 20. Allen Robinson, wide receiver 9 in the 23rd best offense. Point being is you do not have to be in a top 10 offense to be a good fantasy wide receiver. Does it help? Does it make the team more efficient? Yes, but we see top 24 finishes all the time from bad offenses, and it's because volume was king for those players. So I'm going to have a ton of Treylon Burks. I believe in my dynasty leagues, I think it's like 74% exposure or something like that. So I'm all in. Money's where my mouth is, or the other way around. But give me Treylon this year.
No, I love it. And I think it's going to continue to grow. And league winning players. I wanted to bring someone that I loved, kind of like an Elijah Moore, but I didn't want to bring that. So I went to deep dive, find something different for you guys. And my first player, league winning, is Bobbin Like I'm Dobbins, J.K. Dobbins. I want to give him a new nickname. That's two-leg J.K. Maybe that's a bad nickname, but he does have 2 legs now, which is why I'm really excited. ADP RB 18. It's around the mid to late 5th round, which I think is pretty good value. He's my RB 16. He is one of my favorite running backs this year. I tend to see a lot of people fading J.K. Dobbins because they're saying, well, this offense is going to change. Lamar Jackson vultures touchdowns, or a new offensive coordinator. I think I need to remind you who J.K. Dobbins really is, because I think we have forgotten who he was and what we saw that rookie season when he first came out in 2020. We really didn't see the workload in the first half of the season because of Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram was leading that backfield, and then we saw him take the switch in the second half of the season, where from weeks 11 to 17, 77 attempts, nearly 500 yards, 6.4 yards per carry, over 17 fantasy points, 7 touchdowns. He was the RB 10. That was exactly why you and myself were probably drafting him, depending on when you do your drafts, in your dynasty startups, or dynasty or redrafts, maybe in the mid to early rounds, or second round, third round, depending on where he was going at the time. And we were saying this guy's a league winner. He was going to break out in that year. He was going to be this guy. Him and Cam Akers, who I was a victim of drafting both of them back to back in that year, and one tearing his Achilles and one tearing his ACL, and I had no running backs for the year. But that's a completely different story. But look, then in 2021 he tears his ACL, where we were all expecting a massive breakout year for J.K. Dobbins. Then he comes back in 2022, this past year, and he was the first 4 games he comes back, he was terrible. It was because he still needed surgery. He goes back into the doctors and says, yo, something's wrong. He gets the surgery. He comes back for the second half of the season. He goes the last 4 games, or couple of last 4 games of the season, weeks 14 to 17. Keep in mind, 75 attempts on the ground, nearly 400 yards, 7.0 averaging 7 yards per carry, over 11 fantasy points a touchdown. He was RB19 in that span. If he would have continued, he would have continued to have a good year. If he would have played the full season, right? I mean, he could have been a top 15 running back just within that conversation. But look, we just need to remember who he is. And that was with J.K. Dobbins only averaging 43% of the workload during those weeks. What happens if he plays a full season? He gets 60, 70, 80% workload like we hope and expect for a lot of these running backs year in and year out. J.K. Dobbins is one of my favorite running backs coming into this year. And, I think we tend to forget what, we were never questioning J.K. Dobbins as a talent. He was one of the most efficient running backs on the ground. He was a guy that was going to lead his backfield, and in my opinion, still will lead his backfield, even with Lamar Jackson under center. We weren't questioning J.K. Dobbins when Lamar Jackson was there at the time, and now we're questioning him because, Lamar is going to vulture touchdowns, or, this offensive coordinator is going to change some things, which is fair. I completely agree. That's a fair assumption. But I think we just need to remember who J.K. Dobbins is. Remember his talent, believe in the talent, and his efficiency on the ground. Because what we saw when he is healthy, he is an efficient running back, averaging over 7 yards per carry, as we saw in those couple weeks. Look, so for me, J.K. Dobbins is one of my league-winning running backs coming into this year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of J.K. Definitely on board. And, I definitely know that this team is planning on passing the ball more, but if that means they're more well-balanced and there's more opportunities and trips to the red zone, that's probably going to benefit a guy like J.K. Dobbins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my second league winner, and a lot of people, I've made a video about this person individually and got some interesting, feedback from it, but it hasn't halted me at all. Let's talk about Darren Waller. He is a league winner in 2023. The tight end position can either kill you each week or help you win weeks. You want to find that valuable round 6 to 8 difference maker at the position. So give me 5 minutes to tell you why I think Darren Waller will be that X factor this year. Underdog ADP is the tight end 7. He's my tight end 3. Darren Waller is my tight end 3 heading into the year. By the way, if you haven't played on Underdog yet and maybe you want to draft with us when we go live, then use our code LAND when signing up. That's going to get you 100% of your deposit matched. So if you put $100 in, you'll get $100 back by using our code. Link in the description. But look, the good thing with Darren Waller, firstly, is that we don't have to ask the question, is it really within the realm of possibilities that he can be a league winner at the position? Does he really have it in him? Are we sure that he can do it? We have seen him be a top 3 tight end in 2019 and in 2020. Let's look at his fantasy finish and points per game since 2019. Again, those 2 years in 2019 and in 2020, top 3 and top 2 collectively in both of those seasons. And then the last couple of years, he's missed a lot of games with injuries, which, not very predictable with injuries. But those first 2 years there, 2019 and 2020, were the years where he was the feature. He was the focal point of the Raiders offense. We'll talk about that in a second because it feels like he's leaning towards that again. But a lot of people forget how damn good Darren Waller is. They forget the season that he's put together in the past and how historic those seasons have been. Only 4 tight ends in the last 20 years have had a minimum of 107 receptions on 145 targets, put up over 1,100 receiving yards in a single season. Only 4 tight ends in the last 2 decades have done that, okay? One's Travis Kelce, one's Mark Andrews, one is Zach Ertz, and the other is Darren Waller. So, again, if the question is, can he really even be top 3? Yes, we know that he can. We know that he can be elite. And now we're talking about 2023, new year, new me, New York Giant for Darren Waller.
Talk it up.
And let's talk about the status of this team and what Darren Waller is going to mean to this team. Last year, despite them making the playoffs, the biggest glaring need that anyone could see, even if you weren't a fan of the Giants, was a receiving threat, a true number 1 alpha. Last year, they finished the year with the 8th fewest passing attempts per game And guess what? Here were the guys that Daniel Jones was throwing the ball to that led the team. Darius Slayton, he led them in receiving yards with 724 and targets with 71. But if you look at the rest of the NFL, those numbers, he is just 40th in receiving yards and 58th in targets amongst all wide receivers. There's 32 teams, guys. 32 teams. Richie James led this team in receptions with 57, yet he finished 44th amongst the NFL wide receivers in receptions. Again, 32 teams and not a single receiving weapon was top 32 in any major category. Now enter Darren Waller. The clear reason that they traded for him was so he can be the number one alpha for Daniel Jones, who they just signed a long-term deal to. Guys, when Daniel Jones signed that contract, you were thinking it. I was thinking it. Some Giants fans might have been thinking it. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for Daniel Jones. CJ. And I guarantee you the organization was thinking, sheesh, we kind of have to do it, but this is a lot of money. Let's make sure it's worth it, and let's bring in a true number one alpha. That's why they brought in Darren Waller. I mean, look at this depth chart. Paris Campbell, who is a nice player, but he has a career high of 63 receptions. Isaiah Hodgins' career high is 37. Wan'Dale Robinson has very clear limitations in his size, and he's coming off an ACL injury. Jalen Hyatt's a third-round pick with an extremely limited route tree, who's not even practicing with the twos. He's practicing with the threes right now in camp. Sterling Shepard tore both his Achilles and ACL in the last 2 years. Okay? Darren Waller will be the number one target in this offense. He is one of 4 tight ends who will likely lead their team in targets, in total targets here in 2023, if healthy. Those are Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Dalton Schultz, oddly enough, and Darren Waller. Those 4 tight ends are likely to lead their team in targets. And Darren Waller is a freak athlete. I love that you can get him in round 7 in a lot of your leagues. I mean, if you can start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a quarterback, and then Waller, that is a perfect 7th round pick this year. So, hey, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but I'm a big fan of Waller this year.
It's a New York Football Giants, man. Zach's my guy, or apparently potentially going to be my guy as a New York Football Giant. This is history.
That's right.
If you're watching this, doesn't love the Giants because he's a hater. No. Nah, but it's great. I agree. You know, they brought in Darren Waller for a reason, and that's exactly why you should be drafting him. And the price is phenomenal right now. All right, my second league winner guy is a quarterback, a guy I've kind of been low-key raving about, but I really wanted to bring him now with the expectations of saying, hey, this is a guy I really believe in that is going to be taking off right now. And he is Tua Tagovailoa from the Miami Dolphins. His QB 10 on underdog. He's my QB 10. I want to put him high. I was like, dang, I want to go higher, but at the same time, he is like the last guy. I feel like the last person of elite quarterbacks in my eyes that you can draft in the mid to late rounds here. If you are doing a late quarterback strategy in a 1 quarterback league or in a super flex league, you can get him, 4th round, I would say, early 4th, late 3rd round, depending on how, you go about it. So hear me out. QB 10, and let's talk about the concussion. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, because I think we just need to get that out the way. That is everyone's worry. That is everyone's concern about Tua Tags. I am not drafting my quarterback in redraft or dynasty expecting or not knowing the concussions. It's the same thing that we do. Yes, and every injury is different. It's the same thing we do with Keenan Allen every year. Same thing we do with Saquon Barkley. Is what we're doing right now with Breece Hall. It's what we did with CMC. Obviously, every situation is different. Every injury is different. But we do it with other players, and a lot of people are fading Tua because of the concussions. And maybe concussions are more serious, which I completely understand if you are doing that. But, hey, I think for me right now, Tua is one of these elite quarterbacks. Once again, these last elite quarterbacks that we've seen that is on one of the best teams right now who has league-winning upside. And what's incredible is that the efficiency that Tua was bringing and was doing this past year in 2022 that has just been overlooked, and he missed 4 games. Hopefully you can see this on your screen here. But everything that I highlighted right now is phenomenal. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I just want to highlight a couple things. First in yards per attempt. First in deep ball completions. First in accuracy versus rate versus man. Red zone completions. 3rd in QBR. I mean, that is phenomenal. If you look at every single one of those statistics and think, who the hell is that? You wouldn't put Tua's name there. You would think of a Josh Allen. You would think of a Joe Burrow. You would think of a Patrick Mahomes. You're not, if I took this whole name out and said, you tell me this quarterback, you wouldn't say Tua. That's the crazy part about it. And he is on one of the best offenses in the NFL and one of the fastest offenses in the NFL and has one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL with Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, and if you want to put now with the speedster and Devon A. Chain, you can really see something special happening here. I mean, this is be completely honest. This could be a next level type of offense, and Tua is on the center with this offense. The last thing I want to remind you guys is what Tua was really on pace for in 2022. The first 4 weeks, he was on pace for over 5,200 yards, and that's exactly what Patrick Mahomes threw this past year. It was QB1. Right, then he misses the next two games with concussions. Then the next 4 weeks he comes back, week 7 to 10, which he goes off once again, still on pace for 5,200 yards, 7.1 QBR, over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns within that span, averaging 23.3 fantasy points. Then he leaves with a concussion. He kind of plays a little bit differently. He doesn't look like the same Tua because he was probably playing throughout those concussions without a doubt, which led him to have all these question marks, and for us, led us to have all these question marks about Tua while he was playing during that time. So look, Tua tags, once again, one of the most efficient quarterbacks that we saw this past year. A guy that was on pace for over 5,200 yards in the early part of the season, has one of the best wide receiver duels on this team. I would even say an amazing defense of what they saw. A lot of these offseason moves, a great offensive line, Mike McDaniels, the speed is there, and we're still drafting Tua as QB10 because we're questioning the concussions, which is once again completely fair. But if you have this conversation with me next year, and let's say he doesn't miss any games with a concussion, and he does finish what he was on pace for last year, was a top 5 to top 8 quarterback finish, we will be having a different conversation. We will be drafting Tua at, hypothetically, in your dynasty or superflex startups, or in your redraft leagues in the superflex, we'll be drafting in mid to early second, right? In a one quarterback league, we'll probably be drafting him maybe in the 4th, 5th round, or even earlier. We just need to change the narrative of how we are viewing Tua. I understand there are concerns, but Tua is, once again, an elite quarterback, and maybe I'm putting my stamp on that because I don't think a lot of people have said that often, but he is an elite quarterback that you can get in the mid to late rounds in a one quarterback league, or in a super flex league, you can get him in around the 4th round. So I love Tua this year.
Yeah, I love Tua as well. Hard to see him failing outside of an injury, and I get the concerns around injury, but it's just not a predictable thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a great value in drafts. I would 100% agree with you. Do us a favor, drop a like to show some love. Subscribe if you like fantasy content, and let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.